Welcome back. This is module number 3. We're talking about hand position. And one of my favorite pedagogues, Vos-Rochefort, put this as chapter 2, right after, you guessed it, air, two of my favorite things. So you really don't lose any time when you spend more time on hand position because it'll fix a lot of problems that come up later. When we talk about hand position, we're looking for the most efficient way of moving the fingers while balancing the clarinet. And this will allow us to be more musical and create more fluid technique. So we're looking for intelligent use of the fingers. Just like a piano teacher, you want to teach them about where the fingers should hinge from, which is going to be that knuckle. One of my favorite ways to do this is using a coffee straw, which is by far my favorite pedagogical tool. And you can start by putting all 5 fingers with the 2 thumbs on the back. And you're going to start moving each finger one at a time. And so this is going to help the fingers aim. And you're going to make sure it's moving in a curved way from that knuckle. Sometimes with the pinky we slap and let it flatten out. But this keeps it a refined, focused, symmetrical motion. If they're having trouble finding that hinge, you can put a finger on it. And that'll help them feel whether it's really moving from there. Then you move to the next one. And this, of course, the ring finger is on the same tendon as the pinky, so it doesn't move very high. So don't let them get stressed out about that. Then we move to the second finger, which feels much easier. And the first finger, the next pinky, ring finger, third finger, second finger. And then we're going to try adding on. So as we add on, we have to be very careful about how hard we hit the clarinet. We want to create a seal, but we don't want to make it move. As we have less fingers on the clarinet, it'll become more of an issue. So I start with the 2. I also like to tell my students to pretend they have Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle fingers, only 3 fingers on each hand, so these 2 are the same finger. And then start to add on, being gentle, accurate, and hitting at the same time. And here it's very important that it be timed. And that's the last one you're going to do. If they're hitting really hard, as soon as they get less fingers, the clarinet's going to bounce around a bit. So we're stressing efficiency and no extra All right. So let's apply that to the actual clarinet. There are 2 ways that I have experimented with of teaching a student how to hold the clarinet. One of them is Vos-Rochefort's way, and one of them is mine. I'm going to tell you benefits to both, and you can try them or use your own way. But one of the ways I like to do it with students is to have them kneel on the floor next to the clarinet, and they are going to go ahead and reach out their right hand. So we're going to put our left hand on the barrel, their right hand, and they're going to place the thumb right on the thumb rest. That usually seems like the most obvious thing to students, so it's a very easy place to start. So you're going to place the right hand thumb between the tip of the thumb and this first joint, and you want it to be closer to the joint. And you're going to cover the tone holes with your fingers, okay? So you're looking for good coverage. This allows them to take time to actually look and make sure they're covering the holes. You can choose to worry about the pinky or not worry about it right now. I like to teach the home base right away, anchoring them on that key. Sometimes putting a sticker on this key helps them to feel which one it is when they're not sure. A lot of times they'll think they're on the lowest one when they're actually on the one above it. All right, so once we have the tone holes covered, we're going to lift the clarinet with just the right hand, slowly and carefully, lifting and setting. So this allows us to feel the function of the right hand thumb. Then you're going to place the left hand thumb. I like to tell them to think like half of a pirate's X. He says an obtuse angle, that's not very student friendly. And you're going to place it on the octave ring there. And you're going to add the first, second, third, and again, you get to take time to look and feel the holes. I like for students to know about all of the fingers and what they should do from the very beginning. At that point, you're going to pick it up again and feel the way it balances with the hands. Okay? So, one of the benefits of this approach is that it's very sensory. You get to look, listen, do, repeat, touch, all of that. And it avoids the super light fingers. Sometimes you get squeaks from not quite getting seals. I found that most of my students tend to grip too much, and that's not a problem. So my approach, instead of being thumb-centered, is actually finger-centered. I like to have the student place the bell between their knees, and they're going to balance between their knees and their top teeth. No hands. And then you're going to shake out the hands, and you're going to bring them up. So usually students will find that they're naturally curved. I like to say that it's like you're going to pick up a can of Coke. Since I moved to Texas, I like to say you're going to pick up a Whataburger. That one goes over pretty well. So thinking of that, we're going to do it one more time, shake it out, but this time we're going to do prayer hands. At this point, I'm looking at the angle of the wrist. So now I'm going to combine those two, and I'm going to go back and forth, trying to keep the wrist angle the same. That, in my experience, gets rid of quite a few wrist-based hand position problems because they know what to look for with the wrists. At that point, we're now going to forget that we have thumbs and just place the fingers on the toenails. Alright, so I'm still not using my thumbs, but now I'm going to windshield wiper my thumb, an action like that. You can see better from this way. So I'm going to start with the bottom thumb and find a spot where my fingers can still curve and they don't feel compromised at all. And then the top one, I'm going to come down over that register key so that I'm covering the hole and the register key. And that'll be very important later on as we get to more complicated notes. A lot of times students start out too low because they don't have to use the register key, and then they're always sliding awkwardly or picking up, and that thumb can wreak havoc with your hand position. Okay, so that's the thumb-centered, that's the finger-centered version. The first one was thumb-centered. The benefit of this is that it avoids gripping fingers and crunched hand positions. By that I mean when our hands get crunched, and a lot of times you'll find them trying to push one key with a bunch of fingers or cover one hole, everybody pile on top, that sort of attitude. The other thing that helps to keep from the piling up the fingers is to teach, like I said, those home bases. So that bottom one, unlike brushing off, I prefer to use the right hand C and the left hand B. I find that when you place the fingers first, you find a spot for the thumbs that keeps the fingers curved and allows the pinky to reach all the way down here. Okay? And when that happens, then you can still talk about the pinky being a helicopter and hovering over that spot even as you get to the higher notes. Now we're going to talk about some specific issues that can come up. If a passage in a piece is particularly difficult, you can encourage students to go over it with their barrel on their shoulder. And at this point, they can see each of their fingers. And I tell them that fingers are like children. We have to keep an eye on them or they will do whatever they want. Another fun way that I've found changes it up for students is to take just the barrel and put it right against your ear. And then if you do a tricky passage, you can hear if the fingers are lining up or not. You can also tell if the fingers are grabbing and moving the clarinet around because it becomes very difficult. So that's a rather silly way to practice. You need lots of space like your flutist when you do that, but it's very effective. And it's also a great way to encourage students to take a break on their face or to keep practicing when they're too tired to practice with their face. All right, so a few specific issues that are going to come up include the right hand first finger. A lot of times this becomes a primary support system. And the balance points that we prefer are the top teeth and the right hand thumb. Much easier. When this happens and we rely on the first two fingers, and sometimes it's the first two fingers of both hands, we get outward pressure from the thumb and inward pressure from here. So our clarinet is somewhat unstable, and it's actually not the fault of the embouchure, it's the fault of the fingers. So to fix that, I will have them come from a place primarily off the clarinet, G to E, and just feel how light they can be. It's also very helpful to do it with the barrel against the ear, and that will help a lot. Another issue that comes up is that this right hand will grip the rod to hold. You'll find that the fingers are always like this when they're not being played. Instead, we want to anchor that pinky on the home bass key and focus on pushing up with the right hand thumb. And again, there, if you could just hold onto their barrel and push up a little bit, they'll feel what their right hand thumb needs to do. Sometimes they can do it themselves, but it's mostly helpful if it comes from someone else. All right, another issue is the left hand first finger. The left hand first finger has a lot of responsibilities. The left hand first finger is part of E, and then we lift it for F, but it can't go too far because we typically need it soon afterwards. But so if we look at a chromatic scale, we get quite the workout for this left hand first finger. We're gonna not use the alternate F sharp right now, just to show you what all it can do. So this left hand first finger is responsible for F sharp, for G sharp, for A, and for A sharp. All of those are just the first finger, the A sharp or B flat being the addition of this key. One of the trickiest things for students to learn is to go from E to B flat with the appropriate slide. A lot of times you'll find a student picking up both fingers, oops, this way, which is a very risky movement as it's hard to find your way back to home base. So instead we want to slide. A lot of times I'll tell students that it's like this first finger fell asleep, like a narcoleptic finger just falls asleep. And the thumb is more like a pincher, like chopsticks. Okay, so if they're struggling with that, you can have them go from E to B flat. And you can even, if they're really struggling with keeping this finger close, you saw how mine, I'll go this way. It does vent, but it's not a super extreme motion. But if they're going way too far, you can help them find the middle by actually leaving these fingers down. And if you're really stressing hand position, you can stress the pinky there. Before going back to the original way. So there are great exercises for the fingers, specifically for hand position. Vademecum is a huge resource as it does trills chromatically throughout the range of the instrument and finds all of those little finger patterns. I'll go over that a little more in the E-flat clarinet video. Another issue that we come across includes the pinkies. The pinkies are also responsible for quite a few different keys. So I will challenge students to use the tip of their pinky, make sure it's curved, and look in a mirror and go counterclockwise around these keys. And they can eventually get faster and they can go the other way. And the lighter it is, the faster they'll be able to go. You can do a similar thing here. And that is a skill that can also be practiced with the barrel on the shoulder, looking at the pinky without actually playing. Just two more issues to talk about. I mentioned that sometimes the right hand thumb pushes out instead of just upwards. That's one thing to check on. You also want to make sure that this thumb rest can be adjustable and that it's at the right spot for their hand. You really want the thumb and first finger to be fairly aligned. If their hand is set up differently, it will be quite difficult. If a student is pushing outward a lot with that thumb, sometimes I'll encourage them to put the thumb on the thumb rest and practice moving the fingers without that extra aid of the thumb pushing out, and they'll be more reliant on the hinge of the knuckles. For the left hand thumb, if we're having trouble getting into the high register, sometimes it's just a coordination of the thumb issue. One of the things I like to do is encourage them to get that high C and then go on and off the register key, because they have to keep the hole covered and the air going, and it'll become a more fluid movement. Another thing that we run into is the thumb will rebound too far after it's being used, or when it's not being used, it will migrate down there and have a very awkward snap back into place. So again, we want to stress the thumb being like a helicopter and hovering, and that will help a lot. Sometimes I'll even put a hand behind their thumb to feel when it moves. And if it's going too far. Okay, so a couple of repertoire challenges that you're going to come across when you're working on solos. The Debussy Premier Rhapsody has a lot of intricate finger combinations, and also the Mozart, it becomes very clear when fingers are heavy or not coordinated. And again, hand position is a huge investment. It'll take your students much farther, much faster. So please think about using it at the very beginning.